Well, we are in you. Welcome back. We are in Unit One, and we said the main purpose of Unit One is to be able to identify and obtain data. Specifically, in this particular unit, Unit 1.3, where 3 refers to the chapter online databases, we look at different ways of identifying and obtaining online databases. And in the next unit, which is 1.4, we'll look at identifying and obtaining offline databases. Well, all government agencies are required to provide information, um, data to the general public, and if not confidential, but the most important data. Um, but a survey suggests that government agencies only make accessible less than 50% of their data. So you would expect that it would the government agencies would make it easier for us to find data on their website and would also provide data in a format that we can actually easily access, like spreadsheet, using a program like spreadsheet. We'd also think that they would also additionally provide not only data sets, but also what we call documentations. A documentation is a file that holds information about the data set itself. It talks about number of rows it has, number of columns it has, the what do you say, what those numbers in each of the columns mean, if there are numbers, and so on and so forth. So you would expect that the databases, the agencies would provide this data that are easily accessible, then that are easily manipulable in terms of using a spreadsheet, and provide documentation. But that's not the case. That's not. Remember, we talked about the reasons why agencies provide data or use data or save data. Well, the purposes are different, especially if the purpose um, is just because they're mandated to do it, they may not be transparent or open or make these data sets available right away. So it's not easy to even locate these data files or data sets. And even if you find a data set, we may run into issue of accessing the data in a format that we can use in spreadsheets like Excel. Even if you get that, you may not have documentation that is required to understand what this data means in terms of columns and rows and so on and so forth. So what we'll do in this particular unit is talk about some skills that will help you locate data and help you use the data to at a general level, and then access the documentation necessary to make sense of the structure of the data. So, so in this specific, in this unit, though, we said that we are looking at obtaining, identifying and obtaining databases, right? So first we'll talk about online databases in this unit. In the next unit, 1.4, we'll talk about um, identifying and obtaining offline databases. And I kind of use this, and it is not an actual way it is represented, but for our sake, I have, when you see DTBS, it basically means database. Okay, so these are the outcomes for this chapter. Um, First, we'll talk about different sources of finding online data. First, we'll talk about data portals. Then we'll talk about statistical stockpiles. Then we'll talk about agencies, government agencies as source, and we'll talk about non-government agencies as resources to identify and obtain online data. Then we'll end this by um, talking briefly about the steps you need to take to obtain the data that you have identified. And I divide that into three steps. One, searching the data itself. Two, once you obtain the data, also find the data documentation. Remember, data documentation is a file that carries information about the identified and located data. Then once you get the data and the data documentation, then how to handle that data to get a general sense of the structure of the data. That's what we'll do in this unit. First, let's start with how to find the sources, the first source of online database, namely data portals. Okay, so let's talk about data portals. So what are data portals? Data portals are platforms where data sets or databases are stored in this platform so that common people like us can access these data sets. The most commonly used data sets or data portals for data sets include data.go, dataportals.org. There has been an increase in the number of data portals specific to the government, especially after Obama administration's initiative in 2009 to launch the public destination for federal government datasets. And you can find lots and lots of datasets here in the data.gov. Now these data portals are called open data portals because these are free to access. Even though these data portals are said for us to access these datasets, information sometimes is not clear. Again, that takes us back to the idea of the purpose of the data sites. Are they doing it because it is mandatory? Are they really doing it to be transparent? All those things matter, and we'll talk more about it as we go along. But just wanted to give you an idea that data portals are open sources, meaning that anybody can access these, and confidential information is not given on these portals. Now, these open data portals, especially, um, are the portals that the agencies maintain, either at the federal level or at the state level or locally. One such example is the austintexas.gov. And this, if you click on this link, it'll take you to this particular um, uh, locally mandated specific data portal on animals. Sometimes government agencies collaborate with non-government agencies, we call them NGOs, and develop a data portal. An example for that is the Open Data Philly, and the link to this is right here. Now, even though there are hundreds of data portals, sites where you can access data sets or databases, um, primarily there are two types of data portals. And we'll talk about this in the next slide. So, as I said in the earlier slide, there are hundreds of thousands of data portals, the platforms from where you can access data sets. But you can classify these data portals into two major types depending on who is hosting it. There are two data hosting web platforms. One is called Socrata, the other one is called CCAN. Socrata is a private data hosting platform. CCAN is a nonprofit data hosting platform. And we'll talk about each of these individually in the next few slides. So let's look at Socrata first. Socrata is a data portal or data hosting platform. It's a private Seattle-based company, and it sells platforms, the portals to government agencies. So um, and the Socrata has some specific layout. And the example you see here is the Austin, Texas data set or data portal. And when you go through the Socrata-based data portals, you'll have some structure to it, which would be different from the structure of portals that are based off of the other kind of the data host platform, that is the CCAN. So, so I just wanted to give you an idea that and it's private, but it sells information only to government agencies, sells platforms to develop portals for government agencies. In the next slide, we'll talk about the other type of data hosting hosts, namely the CCAN. So let's talk about the CCAN web host or the data host. Um, This is an open source. It is developed by a non-profit organization based in the UK, the Open Knowledge Foundation. And you can access this by using this link, okfn.org, and it'll take you right here. Um, it's open data source, and it's available to government agencies, and most of the federal government sites are hosted on CCAN. So, example, the data.gov that was created in 2009 actually is based off of the CCAN platform. And again, the idea is that the CCAN and Socrata have different specific structure to it, and you can say that by just looking at it. And we'll talk more about this in the next few slides. We'll take an example Socrata data portal and XCAN data portal and try to explore in short videos. Okay, so this is an example of a Socrata-based portal, the data.austintexas.gov. Now, here is the screenshot of the web page, and you can see that there is a specific point where it says data, and you can access specific data sets that you are interested in. And in the next slide, I'll post a short video on how to navigate through these Socrata-based web portals to um, identify data sets of interest and download them and save them. Okay, so let's talk about or explore a portal with Socrata as the hosting site. And one such example is the austintexas.gov portal. And this is very neatly arranged, and Socrata sites are neatly arranged. They have categorized information, and you can search for information, or you can look for different categories of information. So, like all data is here. You see that? You can click on all data and go to all the data there is. In fact, you can go back to the same place by using the drop-down menus. You see that? Data, browse all data sets, right? You can also go to data and specifically go to the reports. Remember we talked about forms and reports as two ways of knowing more about the data. And so So some sites that, especially that have Socrata, have these searchable options. And I'm going to go back to the original page. Here we go. Then you can request um, public information about specific things that is not readily available by clearly going to the link um, that is listed here. Then there are forums, then there is a help button, and you can suggest a data set. There is a lot of information here. Okay, let's explore other things. Um, Capital projects, transportation. You can get to data. Again, it's taking you to that data thing. There are data specific to budget and finances and so on and so forth, several categories. Again, I'll kind of go over this particular site and show you how to download data and what happens in a later video towards the end of this particular video lecture. Okay, so let's the CCAN based data portals have a different structure to it or flavor to it, if you will. And you can access the data sets of interest. And mostly you can filter the data sets based on topic, based on the category, based on whether it's local, and select the type of data sets. For instance, if you want Excel or zip file or whatnot. So we'll actually go, and an example, as I said, most of the federal data portals are actually CCAN based. So .gov is a CCAN based data portal as well. So in the next slide, we'll try to explore in a short video and get to know the flavor of using the CCAN based data portals. Okay, so let's talk about and explore this particular data portal, the data.gov, which is based off of the CCAN, which is an open source platform, as we discussed in the earlier slide. Um, and here you don't see, you can clearly see how the structure of it is different from this Socrata based sites. That is more visual, this is more report like, as you can see, but you can get to what you want by using this more powerful search button here. Or you can go to topics. Again, it also has this information, but the way it is arranged, you can see is slightly different from the Socrata websites. But it also has the tabs and everything. Most of the information is available here, just like in the Socrata, but the arrangement is different. And this is something that you experience by just looking at the once you get used to it, the feel of the data portal will give you hints about, oh, it's probably Socrata based. It's probably on the CCAN based. So this is how CCAN based ones look as opposed to the Socrata ones that we looked at earlier. Okay, I'm going to pause here. So next we'll move on to statistical cells, another way to obtain data. One, the data portals, which are specific data sites where the actual databases are stored. Statistical stockpiles, on the other hand, do not simply store databases or give access to databases. Um, the important function of statistical stockpiles, which are a set of um, sites, government sites, that provide summaries, statistical summaries of from the collected data. Um, Whereas data portals are a raw collection of databases, statistical stockpiles, on the other hand, are summaries of selected data sets from the database. So these are two different kinds of sources if you pay attention to it. So we'll talk about a few statistical stockpiles and see what kind of information you get from them in the next few slides. So in fact, some government agencies specifically work to provide summaries, statistical summaries, and both at the federal level and at the state level. For instance, Census Bureau provides information that's at the federal level, Bureau of Justice Statistics, Bureau of Labor Statistics, National Center for Educational Statistics, Bureau of Transportation Statistics. So these are some federal level examples of um, data stockpiles that provide summaries. Some of them actually gives you options to create your own summaries interactively. And I want you to actually try to access these different um, data stockpile statistic sites and explore different options. An example for a state level statistical stockpile site would be the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center. This again gives a lot of information, and the screenshots you see here is of the Census Bureau, which is census.gov. Okay, let's spend a little bit more time on the Census Bureau. It's an example of a statistical stockpile. And Census Bureau has and carries a lot more information than mere demographic information. In fact, there are interactive applications like American Fact Finder, which gives you interactive tools to build outputs or tables specific to your inquiry. This is these apps like American Fact Finder. They build these tables from decennial census-based data, the data that is collected every 10 years. So this is more in-depth information for a long period of time, as opposed to this more limited resource like the American Community Survey, which is local, and also the fact that it only um, uh, collects samples and summarizes them as opposed to summarizing the entire population. So if you're looking for more accurate data based on the all available information, then Census Bureau or American Fact Finder based on the decennial census data is more useful. But if you want more demographic information, but not worry about the true representation of the actual population, just looking at some specific demographic information in general, then this might be a good option. Okay, coming to the outputs again, we looked at data portals as one source, statistical stockpiles another source of data. The third kind of source that we'll talk about now is specific to agency sites. So different government agencies, they have their own data sets or databases stored, and we'll talk about and explore more for this specific source of data sites in the next few slides. Okay, let's talk about the agency sites now. Most of the agencies host their own data. Um, they also connect their data sets or databases to the data portals that we discussed earlier. So the bottom line is agency sites have their own data sets or databases, but they also connect a subset of these data sets or data bases to the portals. And sometimes, depending on the nature of the data and the reason why they are providing this data, you may find it difficult to navigate through the agency sites. If they don't want you to get to that data, they probably will give you a hard time to access data, despite the fact that they are required to provide it to you. So here are some trips. I apologize. Here are some tips about how to dig data from agency sites. The first thing is get familiarized with the data site itself, the agency's data file itself. Look at the different options there. Look at explore the options. Get to know the agency website. Then specifically look for some words on the website like data, open data, transparency, statistics. These terms usually uh, take you back to the databases the agency store. Sometimes, uh, if you don't find the data or databases on the agency website, a common shortcut that you can use to see if an agency has its own data or not by using this template, www dot whatever the agency name it is, um, .gov/data. For example, if you want to know what data there is on the EPA website, you can type www in the agency name place. You can type EPA, then the usual .gov/data. This will take you to the exact place where the data is held on that specific agency site that you're interested in, if they have such a page on and data portal, or sorry, data page specific to data. Usually they do that. That doesn't mean that if you don't get any data by using this URL template, it doesn't mean that they don't have any specific page to data. But this is like a quick shortcut to see or find data specific to an agency. Okay. We looked at data portals as source. Then we also looked at the statistical stockpiles as the host source for the databases. We also looked at the agency sides. Now let's talk about the NGO resources, the non-government organizations websites, and um, this as a source for databases. That's what we'll do in the next slide. There are some non-government agencies that provide access to data, usually from the government sites. So if you want to access these databases, which are basically taken from the government databases, they do it for several purposes. They may either do it to make the um, information more accessible to people, or sometimes there may be some networks that, or NGOs that act as watchdogs for government transparency. Um, but here's the thing: if you can access the data that an NGO is giving access to you on its own site, I always suggest you go to the original government site to download the data. The reason is we're not sure how they process the data, and and we cannot completely rely on the data that they have received or downloaded and processed it for our use. So it's always good to use the original data if available. Though if the government data, or sorry, if the data is not available on the agency sites, government sites, then make sure you check for its structure is processed. More importantly, try to see if this agency has any conflicts of interest, especially the reason why they are providing the data specific to a government agency. If there are any connections, we need to know that before you can blindly use the data sources. But the bottom line is always prefer data from the government agencies. Now, here is another thing. NGOs not only provide data from the government sites, they also sometimes provide information from non-government sources. For example, the Gallup poll data collected during elections. This data is usually made available to people um, on NGO websites. There again, the same thing applies here. Make sure you look for um, any potential conflicts of interest and the reasons for providing this information and things of that source. So evaluate the source before you use the data that you collected from. Okay, so once you have identified data from these data sources, the next thing is how to obtain the data. In other words, how to get the data that you've identified and download it and use it, and what are the first quick things you can do to make sure the data is reliable. And that's what we'll talk about, the quick steps that you need to go through when you download the data. Now, I'll do this in a short video because it's easier to show you as opposed to describing what should be done. So, in a short video in the next slide, you'll actually see these things: searching data, data documentation, and handling data specifically, and other things that you can do while when trying to obtain the data. Okay, just a quick note that I had created a video for this and tried to upload it in the next slide, but it's too huge, so I had to use a different software and create like a simple, shorter video. So what I'm going to do is have these two slides. In the next two slides, I'm going to briefly explain some stuff. Then at the end of it, I'm going to have this like two small videos where I'm going to cover everything um, that precedes those videos and like starting here. Again, sorry for the inconvenience. Okay, so safe practices. Here's the thing: document your work. Document your work, and you'll see um, in the video towards the end. I'll talk about how to use the Notepad or Text Wrangler kind of simple software to create these text files like notebooks that has information about the when you're collecting data, what is the name of the data, the actual URL to go back to the data if you need to, and why you're collecting data and what do you plan to do with this data, and also provide information about number of rows, columns, and any other relevant information. So that acts like your notebook. You're documenting what you're going to do with this particular data. Now, so that's about, so this information comes from either data documentation, which is a file. Again, I'll talk about that in the video. Um, so yeah, in the next slide, I'm going to talk about a few more things, and then you can watch the video of how to do these things. Okay, so once you have this data, and again in the video, I'll show how to export the data in the Excel format, how to open it and save it as Excel, and then the book talks about try to see if the data file that you've opened actually has the same number of rows and columns, which you can check if you have Windows Control N button, which will take you to the last row, last column. That way you can check the row number and the column number, see if you have the exact number of rows and columns um, as the documentation shows. Now, some data portals like data austintexas.gov are searchable and very user friendly. So in fact, I'm going to use this example to show you how to download data, how to save information about the data in the notebook. Okay, so the next two slides, you'll watch short videos. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to show you quickly from this particular data portal, data.austintexas.gov. And it is, if you remember, it's a simple um, template of data.nameoftheagency.gov. And I'm specifically looking at this data set just to show you what happens when you have data. And in the book, if you remember, the book talks about using a text notepad kind of thing. If you're Windows, use the Notepad++, and you can download that from this link um, that's shown here. I have Mac, so I have downloaded the Text Wrangler by using this particular link. Once I have it, I've created a template, and you can do the same, just like date, name of the data, URL, why data, why you're collecting it, what I plan to do with the data, the number of rows, columns, and the actual source of the data, and so on and so forth, right? Important information here. Okay, now coming to this side, clearly shows data, right? Let's explore this. It says browse all data sets. That sounds interesting. I'm going to do that. And let's see, there are data sets arranged as function of category, type, and whatnot. Try to explore these options. I'm going to quickly going to use this particular tab that says environment, and I'm going to use specific data sets specific to the environment. Now, the first data set you see here is specific to water quality sampling data, and it also says when it is updated. It also shows that it is data set. Whereas if you look at this one, this is not a data set. It's either a story or a report or some kind of explanation. But this is a data set. I'm going to click on this data set, and this will take me to the page where you'll have more information about the data and also a link to download it. You see that? It says view data, and this is the actual data now. You can export the data by clicking on this, right? Explore, export, and make sure you select some form of Excel. I like CVS for a CSV file, the comma separated value file for Excel. I'm going to download that. Is it downloading? Okay, it will download, and again, because I'm screen recording it, it's probably not showing, but this is how you download, and it will be downloaded in your download folder. Okay, once you do that, yeah, it's downloading now. You'll open it, but before that, just let me give you additional information about this data. Now, this about this data, this has all the information about the data, right? Sometimes you may not find such a beautiful description of the data. They actually have a preview of the data file as well, of the table. But sometimes you have to dig to find what is called as data documentation. Data documentation is like a PDF file or a Word file that has information about data itself, like how it is coded, how it is stored, how many rows there are, how many columns there are. And here it's actually shown separately in the same page. If you see, what is this data about? It has 1.28 million rows and 24 columns, and each row is specific to this. In fact, it lists all the columns in the data set. You see that there are 24 columns in the data set, and in the Excel sheet, you only see the name of the column, right? But here it shows a description. This is like almost like a documentation in itself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, what do you say, print this page as PDF. So that will act as my documentation for this specific data that I have just downloaded. Okay, so I'm still waiting. Yep, there you go, print, and I'm gonna print as PDF. So you can see that save as PDF. Um, then I'm gonna save it. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna save it in a specific spot I have for this particular assignment. And there you go. I'm saving it as PDF, and that's it. So I have the data documentation here. Now I'm gonna open the file that I downloaded, right? I'll go back to where it is downloaded, and it's right here, right, in the documents in the download folder. I'm going to open this with Excel file or Excel app, if you do see that, Microsoft Excel. Okay, I'm going to open that, and I'm just waiting for it to open. And once it is open, it is in a .csv format. But for me to actually visualize it properly, I'm going to save it as .xlx XLXS format. And let's see, it's still opening. Probably can. Okay, so I have to record it in another video because the limit is 5 minutes for this particular software I'm using. Anyways, um, then this is saved as .csv, right? I need to change it to Excel so I can work with it. So I'm gonna save it as Excel sheet to a specific spot where I've been storing my stuff for this class, and there you go. And it's a data set. I'm going to store it here, and the name of the data set is perfect. That's what I want. Then I'm going to save it as Excel XLSX. Um, then save it. Okay, it's working on it. You can see that here. I'm gonna wait. So as you can see here, this is the data set, and you can actually see the columns, and I guess there should be like 24 columns. Maybe there's some columns are empty here, but I kind of see there are 24, right? Because Z26, 25, 24 columns. So that's correct, right? 24 columns right here. And it's 1.28 million and rows. So one thing that book talks about, again, I don't have Windows, so I don't know about the keys, but command, and what I usually use is downward arrow would take me command arrows, right? Command right arrow, command left arrow, command down arrow, or command up arrow would take me to the the last, the first and the last rows. So as you can see, it's like almost 1 point some million. So we almost have all the data, and these are the columns. So this is how you can kind of see if this data set is correct. Then you can explore it, but this video is not about what to do. It's just about um, better practices to save the data, download the data, and I'm gonna save this particular text file itself as what do you say? I don't have, okay, save it as at that particular point, and in that particular space. I'm gonna save it as, say, the name of the file is water quality sampling data, right? So I'm gonna say water quality sampling data and notebook. So this is, it has some information. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to actually just have this big notebook, and then you have this. This is about one book and one particular data file, and then you download another data file. Then you kind of copy paste this one and add additional information specific to that document. So either ways, you just need to have a record of all these things. Okay, in the same video, I'm gonna use this opportunity to kind of quickly show you what I discussed in the video lecture. Is this a simple Google search, right? But this is how you do the advanced search. / advanced search, enter, and you can select for, say, if you're looking for downloadable data in general, and you can just look for downloadable data form, or what are you looking for? And maybe I'm just interested in all government websites. You can specifically ask for the type of file you want. But I'm going to just leave it open for now and just see what happens. Advanced search, and this gives me, this is a syntax, right? The downloadable data is a search term. The site is .gov, and there are lots of pages or portals here from CDC. There is from well, EPA. So then you go to the data, a specific site that you're interested in, and try to again explore, try to see if there are any data points you're interested in, and
and so on and so forth. Well, this would be the video um, related to most of the things discussed in the video lecture. I'm having a hard time having this posting the videos in specific spots. So I hope you'll enjoy this. Have fun. Love you guys.